Hi, everyone. My name is Winnifred Louis. I'm a professor of psychology at the University of Queensland, and I want to acknowledge the country that I'm working and living on, and that you are as viewers and watchers. So here in Brisbane or Meanjin, we acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara people and their elders, past and present, and their ongoing connection to country, the sovereignty that has never been ceded. And with me now is Yvonne Orley, who's will introduce herself. Yvonne?
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Winifred, for asking me to do this session. I'm Yvonne Orley. I'm a Kamilaroi, proud Kamilaroi woman, which is northern New South Wales, part of southeast Queensland, and I was born in the Royal Brisbane Hospital off country, so I've got a foot in each field. I'm in my 70s, so I'm saying that because I've been 50 years working in health-related fields. I am a registered nurse, and I've also done studies in QUT in health education and health advancement and public health and all of that sort of area. I'm currently working in with people with intellectual disability and mental illness. I have an accommodation and also an NDIS service. I've also worked with Professor Brownlee, Arthur Brownlee, in the early days of Griffith University. He was a founding professor of Griffith University on working with doing research on families who were in outlying suburbs and their healthcare needs. And also another project was working with homeless youth. And so that's the sort of context of what I've been working. And I was also the National Better Health self-help healthcare program person, which came in hand with primary healthcare when it came into vogue. So what I thought I could contribute is also not just answer the questions, but also the changes that have happened over time on how we view health and psychology.
That's brilliant. And as you were talking, I was thinking, I mean, one of the challenges for our students is that nowadays everything's so siloed, and it's kind of, you're trained in one place. As a clinical psychologist, you expect to do a very narrow job, but actually as soon as you enter the field, whether you're a clinical psych or anyone else, you see everything's interconnected, and all of these challenges require us to understand change and interdisciplinarity. So yeah, over to you. Please say all the thoughts that come to your mind.
Thank you. Thank you. So the other thing that I omitted to say was I've also was invited by Oxfam with a small group of people to do a course on community development. And I learned a lot from that about community engagement and Aboriginal people. That is one of the major factors, is engagement and the processes of engaging people in research.
Mm. Do you want to harken back to the beginning or throughout your career and talk about different training that you've received? Or do you want to skip to the part where you talk about how the training didn't prepare you for the world and the lessons learned since?
Well, the training in QUT at that time was, as I said, was at the crux of a change from the Ottawa Charter in 1986, and that changed people's view of health. And
I don't really know what that is, the Ottawa Charter. I'm sorry to jump
Ottawa
in.
Charter looks at all the factors in a person's life and how interrelated and interconnected they are, which was very much of an Indigenous view of life as well, because of their understanding of spiritual energy and the interrelatedness of everything. And when I was a young nurse in the 70s, it was a medical model.
Yeah.
As you said, very siloed. And over the years, what has made an exponential change to the way we look is the interdisciplinary learnings that we have from each other, you know, because the research, well, I was so excited when I stumbled upon Lawrence Green's proceed and precede model, which yes, looks at all the aspects of a person's life and how they interrelated, so that you can't just look at a person as a one slice of a pizza.
Yeah.
The whole pizza is the person. And so this is where many of our projects become interdisciplinary. For example, if you were researching an urban Aboriginal person, you would then engage with architects, you would engage with conservationists, you would look at ecological aspects, you would look at a whole plethora of things that relate to that person that would be contextually much different than someone living out in the desert.
Yeah, that's right.
So
and does that affect you in practice as well? Like, it's the same, it's the same model, isn't it? Thinking of people in practice, like your own work now with people with disabilities and so on, you have to go beyond just a slice of the pizza to look at the context that they're in.
Yes, you do. You do. And so there was research done, it was in the 60s. They started to come to the realization, and I found this fascinating, that where you live influences the paradigm in which you work, your view.
Yeah.
For example, they looked at people's views on the world who lived in Iceland. They looked at, you know, the horizons were never ending. They were more open, more approachable. They took in a lot more could be there because their world was big. And conversely, if you research someone who lived in Holland in a small thing there, they were very focused on their environment, and everything had to be very detailed. So, you know, whether you're an Aboriginal person, this is what we need to think about. Whether you're an Aboriginal person living in the forest, you're a different person than a person living by the sea or in the mountains or in the desert. And an urban person is different from a regional rural person on how they think. When you go to the Brisbane Ekka, our national show, you will see the people who come from the bush with the felt hat and the corks, etc. They will stand a further distance from other people.
It's true. Yeah.
Yes. And so all of these things have to come into our mind when we're developing our questions and our thesis. You know, there's so much more. So what I would advocate is that whenever you're developing those questions and, you know, your research questions, have a person who actually comes from that cohort be with you.
Yeah.
And because not only the way we think changes, but the meaning of words change as well. You know, I found when I was doing some work with, I was setting up regional aid teams when AIDS came out. And I had quite a few different disciplines. Like I had police there, I had healthcare workers, I had et cetera, right? And when we would say one word about something, would start to arc up with, hang on, what's your problem with that? It meant an entirely different thing to the police than it did to the health, to the doctors.
Yeah.
You know, I know it sounds intricate, but it's really important that you think about those sort of things when you're developing your questions. And so working with somebody from that community or from there, as you develop that, and then reflecting it, back to them, how does that sound to you? What would you have a problem with that, etc., is really
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
That kind of engage research with co-design is really rare. It's not the experience of guys being trained in our system, as students being trained in our system at U2 even now. I wonder if you can speak to your experience of psychologists. Do you have a sort of stereotype or experience that they can come in quite narrow and then they get wider with more career experience? Or did you have training in psychology that spoke to that?
My psychology's only been involved in related to health,
Yeah,
I think, and community development, public health, and
yeah,
like that. So, and the world has changed.
yeah,
It used to be, if you wanted to be a nurse, you stuck in that thing. Now,
yeah,
when I took my young niece to do career planning in grade 8 or something, there's a band, the health band. So
yeah.
you can start doing your studies in health, and then going down to your area of passion or the area that you shine in. And
Mm,
what I would say to people, and I don't know if I'm jumping over the place, but what I would say to people is my philosophy in life, and it's got me to where I am in my 70s,
yeah,
is that I'm not perfect on every aspect of research
yeah,
or every aspect of my work. So what I look at is, I look at the task at hand, I look at what I'm capable of and what I'm good at, and then I look at the gap, and then I engage, resource myself to be able to meet that task. So,
yeah,
for example, if, as I said, maybe that's at 75%, I might have this view of Indigenous people, but then the 25% might be engagement of that person from that community. Or
yeah,
could be somebody who's done studies in that area previously and informs me on how best to proceed. And,
mm,
it could be literature searches, it could be, as you said, looking at videos of what researchers have done. So you resource yourself. And when you are studying, you've got to learn the basics. It's
mm,
different. For me as an Aboriginal person, when I first studied statistic, I had to change my way of thinking, my head, because
yeah,
I'm a right brain thinker, and this was logical proof, like, what is the truth here type of stuff,
yeah, yeah,
and that was a big mental shift for me, and it was quite challenging. And
yeah,
so I thought to myself, okay, well, I'll learn the basics on this and how the process, and then go with that. And so that's how I've done that. I've not been daunted, but the whole thing with research is finding the truth, the
yeah,
whole truth.
yeah.
And
We have a question like that. What would you tell students who are having trouble in their stats course? And I guess I'm hearing you say, well, don't be afraid, just approach it and learn it as one way to look at the truth, knowing that there's a wider perspective. Is that right?
yes, yes. I'd say with I've always said that people who are Indigenous students, they always need somebody, like a fellow traveller, to
Mm,
reflect things from. I mean, we have our supervisors, but this supervisor must be someone who's on the same page. When I was doing studies, I virtually finished my master's, but I didn't get back to it due to a family tragedy. Then it was too late by the time I got back, and etc. But my supervisor, even though she was in the healthcare area, she was in the self-help, she didn't think the way I thought, and it nearly drove me crazy trying to see how she thought, and trying to meet her expectations. And it was such a challenging, I'm saying that word a lot, but a challenging time. So you know, you know, some doctors are good for you, and so you really, if you're having trouble like that, really seek support on the side, and connecting with other students is
Mm,
good,
yeah,
and seeing sometimes when another student explains something to you, you just get it,
yeah,
and sometimes also um, trying to work through with what has been taught, or you're learning, and try and put it into a familiar um, situation.
mm,
So then when you think about stuff, it's the familiar situation will then and match with the process.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. That
Yeah.
application to a context that's relevant to you and that you really understand is so valuable. A lot of times I believe people don't really learn statistics until they have their own data, and that's when it really sinks in. Yeah.
Mm, mm. And so it's good to actually recognize what you're good at and what you're not good at, and
Mm,
force yourself, and to communicate. If you're struggling early, communicate with your supervisor, or and then also meet with the other students and chat through things.
yeah.
But then just do a little bit of work on the side on trying to apply that learning to your own situation that you can identify with, and that will stick in your head, so when you start
Mm,
to do it again. But but research is ongoing learning.
yeah.
It's ongoing, and
Yeah.
you build and build and build, you know. And yes, just that's probably what I could say about that. Yeah.
Oh, valuable stuff, right? And turning it the other way around, once you've learned what's in the stats courses and so on, what are some of the gaps that you notice in your own experience or in those of other health practitioners and psychologists among them? In that they need to unlearn and broaden out. What are the gaps in the training?
Well, I think it just touching back on to what I was saying about my journey, and
Mm,
that looking holistically
yeah,
at a context.
yeah,
And if you're only wanting to research an aspect of that context, you have to define that within your research, because your research, I believe, has to always be of benefit to Aboriginal people, to Indigenous people, because, you know, like I myself as an Aboriginal person, and the many groups I've seen, we get very tired of being constantly asked for our information and feedback, but it
yeah,
doesn't go anywhere. It goes into
yeah,
someone's thesis up on a shelf in their bedroom,
yeah.
and has never seen the light of day. I think that we want to know that when we're being questioned, and it's respect for our time and our input,
Hmm.
that this research data is going to be of benefit. It's either benefit to myself or to Indigenous people.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have that co-researcher with you, or that resource person, this is your lead in to these people to assure them that you're not using them, that you
Mm,
that the information they're providing is valuable, and this is what you anticipate the outcome is, and that you will get back to them and let them know what the findings are. And they may like, before it's actually published or whatever, they may like to comment on your findings to further increase the truth of it, the
yeah,
validity of it.
yeah.
And you know, that I think is really important. So the gaps was when we have a certain worldview, we think that everybody in the world thinks the same way we do, but
Yeah.
but they don't. So this is why I'm saying you need to be really someone from that cohort or reflective of that cohort needs to be working with you if you're not an Indigenous researcher. If you're an Indigenous researcher, obviously you've got inside information on how to work with people, how to engage, the respect, the social mores, etc. What works, what doesn't work, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And if you're a younger person, or this is for your students, if you're a younger person wanting to do research with Indigenous groups, remember that there's the hierarchy of respect, and you know, that and you must assure that you know what you're talking about. They have confidence in what you're doing. So there's quite a lot to do there. So I'll just have a quick look here. Back to the gap. The gap is that when I initially started, there were lots of silos with how people did research. Now it's very interactive and very understanding that a person is, you know, health and or is a social as well as a cultural or spiritual a sense of being. So, but that's particularly important for Indigenous people, because Indigenous people who haven't been disconnected from energy, that's how they think. Everything's interrelated, and they have a different way of viewing things. So and they know that their spirituality, their culture, their emotional, their physical and mental health is all interconnected. But the other thing that's important is, and I think one aspect that I might not have said, I've said location, but urban Aboriginal people and Indigenous people are different from regional and desert type of people. So doing those researches, if you're wanting to look at urban situation, cite that it's an urban situation, you know, or it's someone living in a remote community, or because they are different people. Yeah. And so there may be nuances there that you need to take in consideration. And as I said, communication from those are much different. People in desert communities almost communicate telepathically at times. I mean, I've been in a focus group with people, and I'm connected to what's going on in the group, but the white researcher wouldn't have a clue that they're talking to each other, but he doesn't know. You know, like if they all got up and left the room, he'd wondering what the heck's happened, but they've all been communicating with each other, you know, body language, you know, you know, because that's the way they do it. So, but people who are more urbanized will present their communication style as a much more Western communicative style. However, you've also got to look at they're reticent in being upfront, because the confidence and of being knocked back so many times when they've spoken and degraded or dismissed. So, you know, all of those things affect people's communication style. So you might be asking a question and they might be wanting to give you the answer that they think you want. Rather than the reality of what they think, you know. So, so you've got to get to the truth of that. And so engagement is very important, respect, acknowledgement, and empathy, and how you dress, how you sit, how you stand. You know, don't sit down and put your feet towards people. You know, put your feet under the seat or whatever, or sit, you know, cross-legged. Don't break a circle. Go around the circle. Don't walk across in front of people. Don't hand things across in front of people. All of those things people pick up on. It's not.
Right.
It's disrespectful stuff. You know, so these are some of the little things that we need to do. And how you address people. Ask them how they'd like to be addressed. You know, some people are auntie and uncle.
Right.
You know, so that all of that sort of thing needs to be taken into consideration. You know.
Yeah.
And so what I was saying before, we went from gaps to the ways of knowing. You know, the paradigm in which the researcher thinks affects the design and the data outcome.
Totally.
Very, very, you know, important. And I spoke about the Indigenous people and their connection to land. The closer they are to their cultural roots, the more they're going to think spiritually and in an energetic, holistic way. So if you just, for example, to contrast America, just say, with Australian Indigenous person, right?
Yeah. Just want to say I'm Canadian, but that's all right. Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
So with the changeover from World War II, it's become to a more supply-demand, consumer-orientated society. The consumer, the self, the I am reigns, right? It's all about you and how you can get to what you want to do, and that it's all part and parcel of that big change that came. It started off in Japan and went to America, but if you go back to communities that are not associated with that movement, people in the Middle East, First Nations people, they think in terms of we. They think about honour of the family, of you are a part of and a member of the family. So you think a different way and you behave in a different way. And poor old Americans couldn't understand when they go to the Middle East and people throw things at them, that there's a big fracture there with how they approach life. So we think in terms of family, community, you know, other people first, all that sort of stuff, rather than I am important and I need to get my needs met at the expense of others.
And also, like, our kind of approach as health practitioners, like people have been talking about, you know, that individualism is really part of a sort of British tradition, a colonial tradition, and it's kind of parachuting in here. So the idea that as psychologists, we're going to have, let's say, a survey, for example. Well, you ask someone to rate themselves in numbers or maybe describe themselves in English words about their individual response. That's kind of the quintessential psychological research method. But that's such a funny, narrow way of approaching the world if you start from a different perspective. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. And I'm just trying to bring up these things because I'm not quite sure if that comes up in students' studies, because
exactly. Yeah.
You know, from as an Indigenous person and person who's worked with the different programs, and so that they understand that, you know, why something didn't work.
Yes.
And why, you know, with all the work they put into it, they didn't get the outcomes that they wanted with the community, or why the community didn't take that up. Because if a community doesn't see themselves in that project, then they won't take that on.
That's right. Yeah.
They've got to be a reflection of themselves in that project. And that's that point of engagement. I remember Deloitte did Was it research? No, they did a visit to people in the Northern Territory on conflict resolution and negotiation. So the first day, they all sat down together and they didn't talk about the project or anything like that. They just got to know each other.
Right.
Yes, speak about each other, who they were, have they got children? So they were establishing a rapport and an empathy, and along the way setting up group rules, and so the trust came there and the engagement came there. So that's not just a tool for conflict resolution; it's a tool for how we show our empathy, our respect to people, but it comes back to us, because then they're more open to us, and will freely then give us, because they feel a trust that you're going to handle them with care and respect them. And so it's important.
And kind of circling back on that point for the benefit of students, like I can imagine a lot of students listening to this thinking, well, that's not really stats, that's not really research, that's something else, that's something very touchy-feely, but that's what really people need to think about. Is it's your choice to say that research is approaching someone as a product versus starting from a relationship. It's your choice to say research methods don't include listening to the community and getting to know them. It's your choice to say that research methods don't involve any kind of acknowledgement of country and culture and relationships and background. And not everyone shares the belief that that's research methods. So that's the kind of mind-blowing realization that some students are having right now. They're thinking, wait, I thought that surveys are research methods. Experiments are research methods.
Yeah.
And of course they are. But
so what I was trying to do is put that, we can learn all the processes. We can do the literature, looking at how people have done things. But in real life, these are all the things that you need to take in consideration, because it's nothing worse than putting your heart and soul into something and it doesn't work, or it hasn't lifted off the ground, is because you've missed that engagement, because you've haven't got the right questions. So you get these answers, but they're not really what you need to actually be a lever to get it. I mean, I like Yolanda Wadsworth's action research.
Okay.
That's one of my favourite stuff, is that when you're doing research, do it with people and action it, so you're having outcomes as you go along, people can see it's working, and if it's not working, then, adjusting it, fine-tuning it, because you're going on that journey together. The other thing I found that was important when I was doing work with mothers, teenage mothers at the Gold Coast, I developed a 2-year program, rotational program for them. Was that I got an outside researcher to look at how I was doing that, and what the outcomes were. So she did independent research on what. So she later on followed up some of the girls to find out what the impact of that research was doing, and the group work was doing. And one of the things was decreased child abuse.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
wow.
a lot of the mums started doing further learning because they realised that they had confidence based on what I was, working with. A lot of that, and I would never have thought of that,
Right.
I was looking at the content on, parenting and looking after yourself and all this, and we had one lady come along there, a social worker, and she came dressed in like a hippie style clothes, and she was swearing, and she was, you know, and because she had made the assumption that this is because these girls had been homeless, or they're only young and everything, that that they were a certain type of person, and she was trying to mirror that. But you
Right.
have to be true to yourself, because later on the girls said to me, we didn't like that. We come along to this group because we want to better ourselves, you know.
Mm,
And I don't overdress, but I always dress to how I would like those girls to aspire to dress. And
mm,
so when I'm doing things, so I'm meeting them at their level, and then I notice over time that they change their way of dressing. They mirror
mm.
what I'm wearing, and you
Yeah.
know, how I talk, and they like that respect. And so yeah, so the outside researcher is really lets you know how successful you are in what you're doing. And
Yeah.
I don't know if other people do that, but it was something I needed to do, because it was a very important program, playing with these people's lives, you know.
Mm.
And so yeah.
And it's, in a way, it's that you've talked in several different ways about the importance of broadening perspective and understanding you don't see everything. So asking other people, what do you see? And how that leads to insight and impact that's much bigger than if you just kind of go in with your own vibe. I think that's a really important point, because as many of our students know, in psychology, there's been this real emphasis in the last few years on the vital importance of pre-registration. And that's when you come up with your ideas and write them down ahead of time, and then analyze that, stick to that, report that. And it is really important, and it addresses some of the problems we've had in the past with selective reporting. But another aspect of research that everyone encounters, every single researcher, including honors students, including PhD students, is actually you are wrong. Your ideas are wrong. And so then you need to have not just a way of reporting that they were wrong, but going beyond them. And so that 360 degrees, like asking for the people that you're studying with, asking outsiders, you know, going beyond your own views, it's really valuable.
I think what you're saying too, Winifred, in to help people in, you know, as you're on your life journey, is sometimes when you know you've done something wrong, it's really important,
Yeah.
because otherwise you can keep going doing things wrong and not getting there. So it's really great when you find out that you've done something that's, you know, not right.
Yeah.
It's like knocking at the doors until you get the right one. And also being honest and upfront with what you've done wrong. So when you write a research paper, other
Mm,
people can benefit from that and say, look, this is what this person did, and it didn't work.
mm,
And this is why. So,
yeah.
you know, you're actually informing the academia on and saving a lot of time and money for people by reporting your mistakes.
Exactly. And that's the file drawer problem that, you know, pre-reg and open science is supposed to overcome, like not just putting it in a drawer if it didn't work out perfectly and going on to the next thing, but really being transparent, being authentic. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Not being afraid to do that, because, you know, that's what life is about, isn't it? You know, we're warriors, you know,
Yeah.
we're going out there and
Yeah.
and we, you know, and it's like parenthood. Nobody teaches
Yes.
you. You're
Yes. Nobody teaches
learning.
you. Exactly.
Don't get the manual.
Yeah. Well, in the spirit of admitting wrong things, do you have any examples of common psychological tests or assessments that might be considered inappropriate, or appropriate for use with individuals from First Nation communities? And that could be, of course, nursing tests as well. Like, in your experience, have you encountered
So,
problematic tests or good ones?
so what you're saying is what things they need to consider working with Indigenous people. Okay, I
Mm,
think I've in conversation spoken them about them.
yeah.
Firstly, what is your intent?
Mm,
what is your intent, your purpose of doing this? Is it just to for you to go through a process to say you tick a box?
Right.
Because as I said, you know, when you're playing with people's lives, this is, you know, you might do something that that person will never contribute to anybody else's research again. They won't engage.
Mm,
But conversely, that could be part of them standing up for themselves, having confidence, and advocating for themselves or other people. So,
mm,
so what is your intent? And it
mm,
and ethics is
mm.
really important. So the ethics of why you're doing something and how you're doing it and what are the outcomes
Yeah.
this research will trigger or lever. Okay. And the other thing is I found is reporting back to the cohort of people that you've done that, what your findings have been, and
Mm,
validating that and letting them know, because then you start off a chain of action within themselves as well. Oh, this is what, you know, this researcher has found. So therefore, you know, let's just say, how many spoons of sugar do you have a day or whatever?
mm.
Then if you've got a Fanta and it's got 9 teaspoons of sugar in a cup, well, you know, then they start to understand, hey, you know, like 9 teaspoons in that Fanta multiplied by 3 of them is going to be 27 teaspoons of sugar I'm consuming a day, and I'm wondering why I'm getting diabetes and renal failure.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
so you are, by your questions, you are triggering people to open their mind and new learnings as well, you know,
Mm,
for them to
yeah.
think about things, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think reporting back, knowing the cohort of people, their social mores and
Mm-hmm.
cultural requirements is really important. And understanding that Indigenous people, because I used to run a grants program too, and one of them was an Indigenous one, and previous people who managed that program could never get reports back from Indigenous people.
Mm,
They were slow or they were inadequate. So what I did is, my understanding is people from Indigenous communities, if they put pen to paper, it's very threatening and challenging for them. If they get a letter in the mailbox that's got a window on them, they're scared. You know, like
mm,
they don't like writing. A lot of, this is just general. This is just
mm,
that they don't like writing. So if you change how you are. So I used to have my questions in front of me, then I'd interview people and ask them, and they'd tell me they're
yeah.
okay with that. So, you know, so you may find that you just have to change your way of doing. You may not be able to send out a hard copy questionnaire and
Mm,
also electronic. The other thing is a lot of people are confused and challenged by stuff on the you know, internet, or having to sit down at a laptop and type it in. It's
mm.
amazing how many people are scared of using laptops and computers to do.
Yeah, and of course, there's generational issues there. There's probably some young Indigenous psychology students in the class going, I can use my iPad just fine, thanks. But Yvonne and I are coming from a different generation. And, you know, it's true in every culture, but it's more true in some cultures, right? Like, so just even how many people have a personal computer in their home? How good is the internet? And do they want to spend their time answering questionnaires on the internet? You know, those are things that are not the same for everyone. And so if you don't want to end up with only young, snappy people under the age of 25 or 30, you have to think about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, in outlying Aboriginal communities, more so the lack of access to medical support, a lot of children get middle ear infections.
Right.
Those middle ear infections, and that particularly people like my age, 20 years younger, a hearing loss. We have
Right.
a certain amount of hearing loss. And for example, my oldest brother, he goes into hospital. The doctors talk to him at the bedside, and he, yes, yes, yes. I say, what did they have to say? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He said yes to everything. And
Yeah.
so confirm when
Yeah.
people are making a response, confirm that they actually get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of people can't really hear properly. Sight also, you know, if you are doing things on hard copy or having to write or something like that, or if you're writing things on a board, there in the background there, yeah. So didactic stuff is not good for
Mm.
people in Indigenous populations. It's interactive, experiential, you know, getting people involved in activities that you can find out what's happening. As I said, action research is really good. Yeah, and as I said before, if you have a group, don't break the circle, don't go across in front of people, go behind. Make sure that you set your environment before you do it. You know, where the chair spacing is. And the other thing is a lot of, and I'm used to it because I go to lots of meetings with Indigenous people, is they will keep their phones with them because they've got a sick mum at home or a sick child or something or other, and they want to make sure that they have the phone there so that they know they're connected, right? Because I spoke about connectedness and family responsibilities. So if someone comes and has the phone, they might have to step out, and we don't make a judgment on that. We just say, oh, we'll just stop for a little bit and, you know, wait till such and such comes back in, or, you know, whatever. And sometimes if there's children there or an elderly person they've got to bring along that they're looking after, and so if the children are crying or something or other, don't look down on that, just take it, and as part of like your meeting in your family lounge and the children are playing up and just roll with it, right? And this is what's so good with having an independent person watching what's happening outside of your group. Forgotten what that's called, but it's a particular research way of being where you have
is it observational research?
Yeah. So that way. I
just want to jump in there and say, you know, again, think of how that's broadening the perspective of students of, you know, like, so instead of thinking a meeting is when we all put our family to the side and we all just focus on tasks for us talking as quickly as possible for a short time till we get back to our emails. You know, a meeting is something different, which is integrated with family life and is open to family life, and family life is continuing at the same time as we're talking work. So that's a different way. It is more interconnected instead of siloed.
Also, if you're having a focus group or a yarning circle, is get the group to develop their rules, their group rules.
Yeah.
So that you're not telling them you can't do this, you can't do that. Say, well, what are some rules so that we can get the best outcomes in this time frame that we want? So then they'll say, oh, if someone's speaking, we'll let them speak, and you know, and wait till their turn. Or if we're not, one person can't take over the show, that you know, we all have to be able to speak. You know, things like that, you know. And the other thing that's very important in setting the scene is if there's something that's impacting on the comfortableness of the people there, you need to acknowledge it. If you can't fix it, you acknowledge it and say, look, I know it's really cold in here, and there's no heaters. What can we do about that? They might say, oh, we'll sit closer together, or we'll close the windows, or I don't know. They'll come up with it and they'll bear it because you've acknowledged it. But if you don't acknowledge it, they're not going to listen to any of the things that you're saying, because they're going to try and body language, they're going to try and show you that you need to do something about this cold stuff. So they might go like this, or stuff like that. So if you acknowledge it, you hit the nail on the head, and they will compromise and work with it with you, or if it's hot in here or whatever.
Yeah.
So you've got to do those sort of things, and it's all that stuff will get us the best outcome. The other thing is, we have our questions that we're wanting to ask, and yes, we're going to go back and put numbers beside it, but it's amazing the amount of times that when I'm having those talks with people, stuff comes out of the blue that I would never have thought of.
Yes.
And it's really good to note those, whether it's going to be part of your research or inform you the context. You can write, in the intro that, this is a such and such and such, but sometimes it's important to note those things that aren't even part of your study.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Very important things come up. And what's the good thing about it is it also gives you, if you've got a little notepad you stick in your desk, it also gives you further follow-up for further research.
Yeah.
You might be talking about meals or something, and then they might say, yeah, but a lot of us have problems with swallowing, or we can't get to the dentist, and some of us haven't got teeth, or we've got few teeth, and things like that. And you go, right, so write out in your little book, that this is probably a further research topic that I can look around for when there's grants around,
Yeah. I'm
to
conscious of the time. I've got time to keep going, but did you want to wrap up? This is
That's
the hour
okay.
mark. Okay, great. Yeah,
I've had
good.
my meetings today.
Yeah. Research shows that white straight males are often presented as a default, and other groups are sort of seen as deviations that need to be explained, why women are so strange or so on. Have you seen examples of this, and can you talk us about any examples?
Well, the voice.
Yes.
The voice, that was a recent referendum.
Yeah.
The major people who were against the voice were 55 plus white males.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as you're talking about white thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, so I've spoken how our environment and our experiences forms our worldview, and how we need to be open and mindful of picking up on how other people think and act, because we want our research to be of benefit to them. And we, like with my residential, I say to the staff, you leave your values at the door, because their values are going to be different than your values, and you can't judge other people because they don't meet your values. The world has changed, so we have to respect other people's values and the way they are. But as I said before, the way we think will frame our questions. So those questions, that thesis is really important to be informed as you're developing those questions, to see if they're the right questions. And then even having a small group of people from that cohort testing out those questions before you actually launch into the bigger study. Because
some of the language that the guys learn in third year on that is about reliability and validity. And so, in our undergrad classes, the students learn about how, for example, there used to be an IQ question where students would learn analogies, and it would say, as a cup is to a saucer, is such and such to such and such. And it sort of starts from the idea that we've all seen cups and saucers, which is just not true in many Australian homes of all different cultures than the British tea drinking tradition. So, I think that's something that we really want to surface in these videos. And I wonder if you have any examples from early in your career of terrible tests, terrible diagnoses that people were making.
No, but I just immediately brought back to mind in 2010, I think, or 2000.
Okay, yeah. Recent examples.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I thought I'd go and do a refresher for nursing, right? So I went to
Yeah.
the neurosurgery one, say the hospital. I went to a new surgery because I used to really enjoy neurosurgery, looking after the patients after they've had the, and anyway, so I went to this ward and so what I'm trying to get across is just how different people think and how
Yeah.
they're so focused that they miss the bigger picture. So there's an Aboriginal person in the ward, and it was in the days of the big open wards, where you have
Yeah.
30, 40 people in a ward. And
Yeah.
this
A huge, like a
person,
corridor with beds on
yeah,
either side, and you're just walking down. It's strange.
that's it. And in the middle is the nursing station. So here's this poor Aboriginal person who'd come from probably out west somewhere. The
Mm,
whole time he was there, he covered himself up with a sheet
mm,
because he felt too exposed. He was too different from everybody else. So
mm,
nobody, apart from myself, actually tried to look at that barrier for him.
mm,
Another old fellow came in, a homeless fellow, and he just had brain surgery, and his only slippers, well, these felt slippers, had his toenails cutting through the felt, right?
yeah.
So I speaks to the neurosurgeon, we're doing a debrief and everything. I said, I know this is not acute stuff. I said, but can we please see if we can get a podiatrist to this fellow, because these are the only shoes he can wear in the hot weather, is these slippers with his toe. He says, well, we're here to treat their heads, not their toenails.
Right. Exactly. The siloing can't be holistic. Can't see the whole person in context. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Classic.
that's the sort of thing that and the one about the girls, the pregnancy help girls, with the lady coming in, making judgments on who those girls were and how she was to act with them, totally out of line and so disrespectful.
Yeah.
Be genuine, be yourself, and explain yourself if you feel that it's out of order with how they go.
Mm,
I was trying to talk with many years ago, I was working with victims of domestic violence, and that was a multilingual group of women.
mm,
And so I was trying to work with them on how to work with Australia's healthcare system.
mm,
So you can imagine minimal English speaking skills. So I had to do a lot of work with them on what was the name. Well, I put a word up there. This is the word means pain.
mm,
And what is that name for you? All that sort of stuff. So each of those had different understandings of what pain is. So that's sort of that thing. And I did a lot of charade sort of stuff. So talking about looking at not labeling people. So looking at I say this little boy Mario. I said, we don't call Mario a naughty boy because of his behavior. We love Mario. He's perfect in every way. It's his behavior that is of concern. So what is happening with Mario that he has these behaviors? So it was acting all those things out, and they got it and they worked together well. And then they used the same way that I was doing to be able to communicate with each other.
yeah.
So you just got to be a people person,
Yeah.
and don't be scared,
Yeah.
because you do something wrong, you go, oh, my bad, I'm sorry I did that. I thought this, and
Yeah.
and when you're with people and they wanting to talk, so what is the really important thing that we should be talking about now? what is really upsetting you? What is really your concern? What is things that's happening with you now, or things you think are going to happen, or things like that? So so it's all about them and
Mm,
learning about them rather
mm,
than you imposing yourself. So if you've got your questions, you might have the questions in the back of your head, but you reframe them to match in with how the people are that you're with.
yeah. And maybe you wait and don't ask them because you're asking something else, which is what do you want to talk about? Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. So you just got to have confidence within yourself. And if you make a mistake, admit it and say, oh, gee, I'm sorry, I did such and such. I didn't realize that that was a disrespectful thing to do, or whatever, and also how you dress. If you're
Mm,
Yes, don't come in with fluffy slide-ons and exposed belly button, um,
mm,
and off the shoulder style. If you're wanting to work with people in a respectful way, that's more of a dance party, or
mm,
with your friends. You're not with friends. You're with people that you're seeking to help, and you're a professional person, but you're also establishing empathy. Yeah.
yeah.
And Muslim populations, I do a lot of work with Muslim women. I tend to dress with long dresses and long sleeves. I don't wear their stylish thing, but I'm mirroring who they are, and they get that respect. Um,
Mm,
and
yeah.
yeah, so lots of little things, and that, honestly, if you came in wearing inappropriate gear, you will find you won't be respected, you won't be heard, you won't get what you want.
Mm, yeah. There's a sort of related question, I think. Well, I feel like it's related because it says, is there an Indigenous approach to establishing causation? And for me, what you're talking about in part is about interconnectedness and relationships being part of causality, not just like one cause. Even if we're thinking about something like sugar, Fanta, sugar, yes, that's true. But there's also the relationship and looking at the holistic person, and with looking at them with respect and empathy.
Yes, yes, and when you're writing your paper up, explain the full context. But say, whilst I'm looking at how people think about their body, we're looking at the wider thing is that the people I'm studying come from an Indigenous community where they were supplied with flour, sugar as their staple diet, and so there's this is with the understanding that this is a major influence on their diet and how they eat. Yeah.
And I'm not sure our psychology students will know this, but for example, there's this concept called a food desert. So, if we look back across the last 100 years, there might be a community that had a healthy lifestyle living off the land. Then they were forced into a limited context, not allowed to leave a reserve, and given sugar and flour, like European food, at a marked up price. And even now, there might not be a handful of stores, but maybe perhaps one store. And that store sometimes literally does not sell fruit.
Yeah.
So the context where people are being lectured about what they eat is very much individually lensed, but actually it's a community problem. I mean, that's not true, of course, in the urban context, but it's about seeing those contextual factors and writing them into your report.
I was a UNESCO representative for Queensland for the Baby Friendly Hospitals Initiative,
Wow.
and at that stage, the United Nations were very concerned about milk formula companies supplying baby powder, milk formula powder, to third world countries, and the women thinking that it was a superior food to breastfeeding. So
Yeah.
UNESCO developed the theory of the baby friendly hospitals, where we were stopping the free supply of baby formula to hospitals. They used to have big crates with all these baby bottles, and the babies were kept in the nurseries, and the mothers didn't have the 24/7 contact with them. And it interfered a lot with the mothering and connection. And
Totally.
also, the nurses were bottle feeding those babies during the night, so they sucked a different way, and it was having difficulty with sucking a breastfed in the way they breastfed. So
and even now students may not know that formula is often very sugared, and so is baby food. It's super sugary and unhealthy.
A lot of babies were dying in Africa because there was unsanitary production. The water was unsanitary, the way that they were doing, and the babies were getting diarrhea and dying. So, and what was happening is these low socioeconomic cohorts of people were thinking that the Western way of doing it was a superior thing, and were taking that on board. And the same has happened in Australia. The hospitals were being supplied with all this free formula to feed these babies, but it was and they were the nurses weren't being focused on encouraging the mothers to breastfeed, because we've got formula here, and take this samples home with you, and and so a lot of the babies weren't getting all the nutrition that so the people that I had to influence were the senior people in neonatal units in Queensland. So I went about it a different way. It's a little bit not to research, but it's just showing you how you work with different things. So I organised with one of the major children's hospitals in Brisbane. I organised a debate. I debated for formula, and I got them to debate against formula. And guess what? They switched, didn't they? They then realised what I was trying to say. So rather than me going that way, I did the opposite, and it was a major change. And the other thing is I had just a piddly little grants, like $5,000, to help them to change from the way they were to being a more baby-friendly hospital, stopping the formula, spending more time with mothers. I got them to be able to get the babies out of the nurseries, to be able to go, you won't believe this, but this is in my lifetime, get the babies out of the nurseries to be able to be next to their mothers, for fathers to be able to be there during labour, because fathers weren't allowed to be there during labour. So it didn't have this connection, this great joyful moment with their life. So, the things that you do, you have to be creative on how you do things to get the outcomes you desire. And, that worked really well.
And your story illustrates as well respect and empathy and relationships, and how you created that change, building that change. That's fantastic.
The other was Green Hospital, just quickly, was Green Hospitals Award Scheme I created. Green Hospitals Award Scheme was I had a little grant there for, and hospitals had to apply, looking on waste management, energy efficiency, cultural connection, working together with supporting staff. And so major changes throughout Queensland after I did that program. Cairns developed an Indigenous herbal garden and everything there. their energy, the hospitals looked at electricity use and different ways and what they could do. Waste management changed. They did collections of, plastics and paper and all that sort of stuff, what they were doing with their the food waste and all that. So if you give people incentives, they'll be inventive and figure out how to do it themselves.
That's fantastic. I want to ask you before you go, are there types of graphs and data visualizations that you particularly like or dislike, and why?
I do like pictorial things. I find that's hits home better than a Gantt chart, not a Gantt chart. Things that I can't think of the word.
It's like a table or a line graph?
Yeah, line graph. Yeah, it doesn't do it for me. I mean, I'm talking as part of an Aboriginal person. I like pictures.
Yeah.
I like relatable stuff. So as I said to you when I was trying to describe a holistic person, I talk about a pizza.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the slices of a pizza. And if I'm talking to people about where what their life is, I say, that little white thing that's in the middle of the pizza that holds the lid up, that's you in the middle. What's happening behind, those circles that come out from you? So I'm drawing pictures in for them to think about. So I find more relatable diagrams that relate to something that people can connect with. I can't really add too much more to that. I'm sorry, Winifred, I can't.
No, it's an important point. I think, like, just coming back to that idea of thinking of the audience and what are they going to see, what are they going to understand, and can they connect? And those are not really questions that most people think when they're preparing their line graph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like pictures of a cigarette packet with how many cigarettes are in it, or I don't know, or things that it might not be too academic for you to share to relate back to them, but if you're relating it back to that audience, it's very important that they understand that. And even if that you said 25% of the group did such and such, what you do, picture of a circle with 25, but like a quarter of the people on a clock sort of thing, that was that sort of part, so it's directly relatable. But that may be different than what you do if you're doing an academic paper.
Yeah, that's right. And in a way, we train ourselves to be able to communicate sophisticated information using very artificial means like a moderation graph and interaction and regression. But, statistics are artificial, they're highly specialized, and they serve a purpose. So it's not that our methods don't have a purpose, they do. It's just that when you think that these are the only ways of communicating, you miss the fact that you're not communicating to any audiences other than the highly trained narrow group. And that isn't actually a problem in our approach, right? I think I come back to your point earlier, Yvonne, you talked about why do we keep failing to affect change? Why are there some problems that are not being successfully addressed by government? They throw study after study, they throw money after money into some of these problems. Why are they not working? Well, they're not working because the research methods are not appropriate. The community is not engaged. The community is not buying in, and they're not buying in because they're being treated with disrespect and individualistic, moralizing, stigmatizing judgment instead of empathy and respect for them. And so that's the context for this whole series. But it's just been so great to hear your perspective today. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think if you think of the people, by the people, for the people, I don't know where I got that quote from, but that is the major thing. If it's just for yourself, you know, there may be aspects for yourself, of course, but what is the ethical thing that you're using your money, your time, their time on getting to you know, something of benefit,
Mm.
you know, and that they go home and they feel good. They feel good that they've actually spoken to you and something's happening for them. There's so much frustration, as you said, time and time again. They're getting the information, but where is it going? What's
Yeah.
doing, you know? And that's why I like action research. You're actually doing something, a project with people. You're getting the data, but you also and it refines your data as you go along. It refines your questions and things as you go along. So yeah, I think the ethics of the situation is really, really important, and that's what's as with the words that you were saying. That's what's been missing, is people are getting things imposed on them. There's lack of engagement, and that engagement by the very way you do it is an empowering tool. The outcomes are people will do it then for themselves. When I did the Oxfam thing, the community development thing, the fellows impressed upon us that we were not to think of the outcomes. We were not to think of what the answers were. You pose a question, or you work up the question with the community, and they will do the answers. And it will be something completely out of the box that you might have thought, you know, never thought of. Works for that community. The money might be going to buy boats for them so that they can fish, and then they can eat the fish, and that will help them, you know, they could sell the fish, they could be healthier, all that stuff. But you may not have thought of that. The best would have been buying a couple of boats.
Yeah. And if there's really one thing that you could learn from this students, it could be mistrust every scientific method that doesn't involve talking to the community and saying, what do you think of this method?
Yes, and getting that feedback, and not being afraid to get negative feedback. Exactly. Because negative feedback's good.
Yeah. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. Become better. Yeah.
It is. If you go along the wrong path and it's not the right path, then you know, thank goodness for that. Now I know I won't go along that path again. I'll go.
Yeah, exactly. And failure to learn is the opposite of science, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I really appreciate your time. It's just been such an honor to listen. And I feel like we could literally talk for an hour and a half more, right? And just loop back through everything you said. But is there anything you want to close with? Is there any sort of final thoughts as you reflect on this and what the students could learn from you?
I'll just have a quick look at your questions.
We did skip some.
Over here.
I don't think that you answered the question, ANOVA versus regression. Do you have a favorite statistic and why? Not everyone does.
No. As I said, I really like to do things. I'm different. I'm a communicator, right?
Yeah.
But there might be some students that find it very difficult to communicate. If not, grab somebody else who is.
Yeah. Good advice.
Yeah, because I'm a communicator, therefore my research styles matches who I am. And so I do what I do best, and I love focus groups. I love working together with people on learning or doing things with them, and I find that works very well with me. And for example, I hold a monthly group with people, and I was going to cease it, and they said, please don't. The work we're doing is life-changing. And awesome. Really, really good about that, because I really don't sometimes, I mean, I can see people blossom and grow as I go along, but it's nice to hear that the work you're doing, the way you're doing it is effective. So,
Yes.
and that's, you know, that's how we feed our soul, you know,
Yeah.
by doing it in the way we can. And that's what I want to get across. I think probably my final thing is don't see things as problems. See them as challenges. Think about the whole context of what needs to be done. Think about where you shine and think about how you resource yourself. So you resource yourself with information, with people, with whatever it is that you need to get the job done. And you can do anything in the whole wide world if you approach it that way. And be like my 81-year-old grandma before she passed. She was at always, if she thought a certain way and you gave her more information, she was very willing to change the way she thought.
Yeah.
And she was a very intelligent lady, and someone to be respected and admired. So, you know, always be true to yourself and true about yourself to other people. And in that way, you'll get the best outcomes from your research. Always be respectful and mindful of the group that of people that you're studying, so that you know that each culture has its own nuances. So you need to not say that you're of that group, but you need to know how to work with that group. So you along the way you say, you know, is this working, or what do I do? And then that, yeah. And yeah, like for example, you don't have ham sandwiches at a Muslim meeting, would you? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit crass, but saying that, but you know,
No, it's an example of respect, basic respect, but really easy to miss, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, be yourself, be confident, be open and approachable to learning. And so the journey you have with those people is also your journey, and you're building upon that. And then as an academic, you're sharing your learnings with other people. So you must make sure that they are not credentialed, I can't think the right word. Or did you say valid or authentic, or no? It has to be academically rigorous.
Yeah. Share. Do you mean share your academic research?
When you're sharing your learnings, it has to have that the rules around it, so that other people can then pick it up and work with it.
Yeah.
If it's too loose or ineffective or waffly, they can't get it. They can't take it along with them. It's like when you're trying to contrast apples with oranges. If you've got to have it in the context of the apple, for the apple people to understand it and to pick it up and go with it. So whilst we have our own trajectory, we've got to be mindful of not only are we going to benefit the group we're with, but if you're going to be doing a paper or something like that, it has to be transferable. It has to be something that is written in the style or the way that academia require.
Yeah. And I think in psychology at UQ, we do a really good job at training people not to waffle. We do a good job at training them to report in a rigorous way, but it's still quite hard for students to think, will my paper be of use to anyone else? Can I speak in a way that other people can understand? And we're not going to necessarily solve that now, students, but I hope you feel really challenged and inspired by what you're hearing. Thank you so much for this interview. It's just been so rich and fabulous.
Thank you very much, Winnifred. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.